Scatterplots are used for bivariate data, and they're used to show whether or not there's a relationship between two variables. So a relationship can also be called correlation and association. And when we're looking at correlation, we're looking for whether it is perfect, strong, or weak. So that means it's got a perfect relationship, whether it's a strong relationship, whether it's a weak relationship. And then the other thing that we're looking for is whether it's in a positive direction or a negative direction. So the positive direction means that as one variable increases, the other one does as well. Whereas with a negative correlation, it's as one increases, then the other will decrease. So an example of a negative correlation is as the time goes on of owning a car, the value of that car decreases. However, we're ignoring vintage cars in this situation. And an example of positive correlation could be as the temperature goes up, more icy poles are sold, for example. So I've just got some little diagrams here. The green ones are positive correlation, the red ones will be negative, and then the one at the bottom will be no correlation. So for a strong correlation, we want to see the dots really close together and in that upward direction. So you can see how they're all really close together here. That's strong correlation. Then we've got weak, so we can still see that there is an upward trend in the correlation, but the dots are much further apart. All the data is quite far apart. And then you have perfect correlation, and perfect correlation is when it's all literally in a straight line like so. And all of those ones are positive because they're going in an upward direction. So then when we do negative correlation, negative strong correlation, same thing. All the dots are really close together, and you can see that really strong relationship between the two variables. Weak, again, the dots are a little bit further apart, but you can see that there is that downward trend still. And then again, perfect correlation is when all the dots are in the straight line and show that perfect correlation. Then there are some things where there is absolutely no correlation whatsoever between the variables, and that would be something like this where it's all just sporadic. There's no real pattern to it. You can't see any trends happening. So when we're describing correlation, we always describe it with direction and strength. So the other thing we do when we're looking at scatterplots in year 10 is drawing in a trend line by sight. So what that means is we are looking to see how we can draw in this upward or downward trend line. And you would have seen them in the news and things like that when they're looking at trends. They can draw in a line to be able to make predictions. So they are used to make predictions. And obviously, the stronger the correlation, the better the prediction will be. But we also have to look at where the prediction is being made. So if it's within the data, so for example, we've got a scatter plot like so, and we draw in our trend line. If we make a prediction in the middle here somewhere, that is called interpolation, and it's quite a reliable prediction because it's within that data clump. If I went ahead and made a prediction up here outside of the data range, yes, we can still use it as a prediction, but we shouldn't rely on it because we're in uncharted territory. We don't really know what happens beyond those data points. And the last little thing, I've just got an example here to show you how a scatter plot is drawn. So you've got your two variables. So it's the cost of the call and the distance of the call. So how far away you are calling. And you can see that as the distance increases, the cost of that call does increase as well. And if we could draw a trend line in there, again, you obviously use a ruler, but if we were to draw a trend line in by sight, it would be a straight line similar to that one there. And then we could use it to make a prediction of how much would a call cost that is 50 kilometres away? So we would have to look here, and that would be, we could say $5.50, for example. Then I could ask you to predict what about at 110 kilometres away, which is up here. We could say that costs $10, but we aren't sure and it wouldn't be a reliable prediction because it's extrapolation. It's beyond that data. So that's important. So up here we have this is extrapolation, and then in here is interpolation. And it's important to know the difference between those. Scatterplots are really useful for looking for trends and relationships between different variables, and they're used in the real world quite a lot to make predictions.